We're going to turn now to other news out of Alberta, where a cabinet minister and the mayors have written to the federal government over what they say is the unfair distribution of housing money.
We don't always ideologically agree on things politically, but what we do agree on is that Alberta deserves a fair deal inside Confederation, inside the country of Canada.
I'm very disappointed that we were not able to get equitable support from the federal government.
We're the fourth largest province. We have 12% of the population, and we're just not seeing that money come back to us.
Alberta's community minister and the mayors wrote to the federal minister complaining about the money they're getting through a federal program, saying, quote, Alberta represented only 3.8% of the 5,200 units funded through this initiative. Minister Jason Nixon joins me now for more. Minister Nixon, it's good to see you today. So tell me, what have you heard about why these 33 of 39 applications were rejected?
Well, what it comes down to is this. There's a $1.5 billion rapid housing program being funded through CMHC and distributed by the federal government. And Alberta received under 3% of the total funding of that $1.5 billion. And we're 12% of the population. We're the fourth largest province. And so both of the mayors and myself have made clear to the federal government that we expect per capita funding and to make sure that Alberta's money through CMHC returns here to build these important projects. As to why this discrepancy, that's the answer that we're looking for. We've been reaching out to the department, where of course there's been a cabinet shuffle, which is adding to some of the complication here. But we need clear answers on what's taking place. And my biggest message is it's not acceptable to the province, to our largest cities or to the province, to see discrepancies like this, a tremendous amount of money going to elsewhere in the country, and Alberta not receiving its fair share.
Okay, I want to follow up and just get a little bit of clarity on that. You mentioned you want fairness in how this money is distributed. You said there that Alberta represents 12% of the population. Is that what you're asking for? Are you saying Alberta should get 12% of this program pot?
100%. We definitely should be receiving per capita funding, so 12% of the pot is definitely what we're asking for. And not just on this program, on all other federal initiatives like this. We have challenges in our province, just like provinces all across the country, in addressing affordable housing. We're investing significantly as a province, but we expect to receive our fair share of CMHC funding and other funding from the federal government. And when you see, an announcement by the Prime Minister yesterday in the city of Hamilton, and I'm sure Hamilton needs housing, sure. But when you see one announcement in Hamilton for more than the entire province has received, the province of Alberta has received, that's just not acceptable to us. And the federal government's going to hear loud and clear from us in the future when this takes place.
Okay, well, I mean, this is a long-standing concern. So I do have to ask you about the approach you're taking. On the one hand, you're asking the feds for help. You're asking for per capita funding. But on the other hand, you're blaming the affordability crisis on them and criticizing their policies, for example, when it comes to carbon pricing. So why do you feel that's the right approach to convince the Liberals to invest in these housing projects?
Well, the truth's the truth, and so Albertans like to speak the truth, and without a doubt, the federal government's policies have disproportionately impacted affordability across this country, particularly here in Alberta. And speaking as the minister responsible for social services in the province of Alberta, I can tell you the social services sector has repeatedly told me about the damaging consequences from things like the carbon tax on the federal government. So we need to be clear about policies that are making the affordability situation worse so that we can be able to solve them. Nonetheless, because we're speaking that truth does not mean that the current government should disproportionately punish our province. And if that's what's taking place, that's completely unacceptable. And let's be clear what that means. That means that the federal government is playing politics on the backs of Albertan single mothers, on Albertans who are facing disabilities, on our Indigenous communities, and other people in need in our province. And that's completely and utterly unacceptable if that's the case. Okay,
well, you've certainly voiced your concerns. You mentioned earlier today in your press conference that you're still waiting on a response from Housing Minister Sean Fraser. What options do you have at your disposal if you don't like the response you get?
Well, look, this is an issue across our government. As you mentioned, this is an issue between the federal government and the province of Alberta that's long-standing. My premier and my boss has been clear that everything is on the table now, and that we are headed to a point where if we do not see Alberta treated fair within Confederation, that we will take significant actions, including using the legislature. I'm not going to speak to that today. I think the federal government should do the right thing on this file. I expect to hear from Minister Fraser shortly. If not, he'll be hearing from me again. And let's try to, again, get investment significantly inside this important issue. But to be very clear, Alberta will take action to defend our province. Our job is to protect Albertans. The Prime Minister and his cabinet's job is to hold Canada together and to be able to make sure that we are working together as a country moving forward, not to disproportionately punish one area of the province or of the country.
Can you be a little bit more specific there when you say that significant action is on the table and all options are on the table? I'm not asking you what you are going to do, but can you give me some examples of what the options are? You mentioned legislative there. What else?
Well, you've seen, I mean, we've already legislated things like the Sovereignty Act to be able to use legislation like that to be able to defend the province. We have some other stuff that we are working on to defend Alberta's interest. We hope that we don't go to that. Our preference, as the Premier has said, is that we would rather work together within Canada. But that is on the Prime Minister, Prime Minister Trudeau, to make sure that it happens. Our job, though, at the end of the day, is to defend the province of Alberta, and we are going to do that.
Okay, I want to follow up on something you said previously, which was the reference to Hamilton. The housing money given to Hamilton yesterday is really just a drop in the bucket of what's needed there. Mayor Andrea Horwath was on the program with me yesterday saying that it will make a small impact, but it's better than no impact at all. Obviously, all orders of government, all levels of government need to chip in to solve what everybody agrees is a crisis. So what is your government doing to help bring down the costs of housing?
My department alone is investing $1 billion over the next 3 years in affordable housing all across our province. We're spending over $250 million in rent supplements, as an example. We're also doing unprecedented investments in things like addiction housing, homelessness inside our province, and other issues. And we will continue to work with our municipal partners to be able to make sure that we do everything that we can to address this issue. But the federal government has a responsibility, and they need to come to the table. That said, what I'm talking about today is not asking for a special deal for my province. I'm just simply asking for my province's share of the resources and to make sure Alberta is treated the same as every other province in the country.
Well, I do have a follow-up question based on that, and it relates to the Prime Minister's comments yesterday in Hamilton. He is urging provinces to do a little bit more. So if your province is spending $1 billion, why not go to the feds, hold it out as an olive branch and say, look, we're willing to collaborate on this. Why don't you come to the table?
Well, we are at the table. The projects that would be part of the rapid housing program with CMHC also have funding associated with the province often. The federal government is very much aware of the significant investment that we're putting into affordable housing. So we are at the table. In fact, I would say we're leading, and I think that the country should take some example from Alberta on some of the unprecedented ways that we're addressing things like addictions and other things inside our province. Again, we want to be treated fair under the CMHC program, and anytime that you see a Conservative government with two of our largest mayors, who, to be fair, are not of the political ideology of me, saying the same thing, that probably emphasizes that there's something wrong here with how this money has been distributed.
Okay, and I want to ask you for more details on something you said earlier today about rent control. You shot down the idea of rent control in Alberta, so why is your government not willing to consider rent control when other provinces have it, like Ontario?
To be clear, rent control long-term will create worse problems for us when it comes to affordable housing. All of our economists and experts that work with our department, the Department of Finance in Alberta, have been clear on that. In the end, all that will do is create less homes for people to be able to live in. So instead, we're focused on solutions that are going to actually address the problem. And that's why you see Alberta making significant investments inside affordable housing and other issues, working with our friends at municipal affairs on bylaws and other permitting issues to be able to make sure the developers can do their job and that industry can be able to create homes for people inside our province. But we are not going to go down the road of a policy that has been shown to make life worse and to make the exact problem that we're trying to fix worse.
Okay, I'm going to challenge you and press you a little bit on that point. CBC has reported the story of one resident earlier this year who saw her landlord increase her rent by nearly 50% in March of this year. Rent control prohibits that sort of thing. So surely that is wrong, is it not?
Yes, and Alberta has actually passed legislation recently to be able to put some parameters around when landlords can increase rent to be able to help individuals deal with that. But putting rent caps on at the end will just cause developers and others to be able to leave and not participate within the market. And our challenge here in our province is that we need to create more homes for people to live in to be able to address that issue. We're working on a plan in Alberta that will see our affordable housing stock increase by 40% between now and 2031. And that's what my focus is going to be on, is creating more doors and more places for families to live in, and not restricting development, because in the end, that will only make the problem worse.
Okay, Jason Nixon is Alberta's Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Anytime, take care.